Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to our live stream huddle for sharing approaches to human rights video archiving. My name is Meghana Bahar, and I will be your host for the next hour and 15 minutes. At Witness, I lead the Global Digital Engagement Program. I'm joined today by my colleagues Yvonne and Ines Aisengart Menezes, who are the team behind Witness's Archives program. A warm welcome to you all, our guest speakers who represent Witness's partner organizations joining us from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for your presence here. Mohammed Noor of the Rohingya Genocide Archive, Patrick Otim from Refugee Law Project, tuning in from Uganda, Lauren Salim from Open Archive here with us from Canada, Cristina Fontánez Rodríguez from Archivistas and Espanglish, and Brenda Danker from Freedom Film Network, tuning in from Malaysia. So when I think about archiving, my mind often reaches to the reverse notion, that which is unarchived. I often ask myself, what of our own selves, the lives we have led, the elders we descend from, the communities we are part of that remain unarchived in this continuously colonized, occupied world? Each one of you here are torchbearers in the fight for justice, freedom, accountability for human rights. And we are still here existing because we know that our stories are narratives that pierce through an apathetic world, that reveal the brutality of being alive as our fists protest the denial of genocide, bear witness to injustices that we do not yet know how to articulate. But our creativity in wielding technology to shape our collective visions of justice reach for some answers. By recording and preserving our stories, I do believe that we are indeed archiving hope, that we will one day have our silences, our histories, and that of our communities, our people, documented and remembered. And with that, I'd like to start off our conversation with this first question to you, to my colleagues Ines and Yvonne. What is video archiving for social justice for human rights?
Hi, Meghana. Hey, good morning, afternoon, and evening. It's such a pleasure to share the screen with you all. So video archiving involves plans, strategies, and practice to ensure the management and access to video collections over time. So this encompasses various tasks, including collecting, cataloging, storing, preserving, securing, and sharing the collection. So while there is no single formula for archiving, there are best practice tools and resources, such as the one we developed at Witness, that can better fit your structure and goals. So additionally, best practice could include cataloging information in an objective way, avoiding personal bias, prejudice, or interpretations, and organizing your collection to maintain your video files, provenance, and original order, which is such an important measure when using your video collection for justice process. So today, digital media offer vast possibilities for communities to create and share their narratives, serving as a powerful tool for empowerment. But however, digital media also presents several challenges, such as the obsolescence of file formats, software, and hardware, and the widespread use of social networks for sharing videos allows the vast dissemination while being conditioned to private platform conditions. So collecting evidence of human rights violation or territorial threats can also pose life risks to communities. So in time of widespread misinformation, disputes over narratives and historical revisionism, organizing and creating human rights video archives, it's an element of care and empowerment of communities. Yvonne?
Yes, Yvonne, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think Ines put it beautifully. I mean, I can talk a little bit more about the role that we play at Witness in this work. But yeah, first of all, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for that amazingly inspiring introduction, Meghana, and so grateful to all of our partners and allies and friends for joining us for this huddle. I'm really excited to hear from everyone. But yeah, so, at Witness, we have the archives program. We see archiving as a really important step in enabling video documentation to be used towards human rights. And so, as we know, justice and accountability takes a long time. It's a really long haul. And so how do you ensure that the video documentation that you captured today stays intact, is secure, is authenticatable when you need to use it and present it sometime in the future? And that is the answer to that is by archiving and preserving it, as I think everybody on this call knows. And so what we do is we support human rights defenders to archive, to secure their videos and to keep them usable for justice and accountability, whatever those goals are. So our role as archivists at Witness, so Ines and myself, on a practical level involves providing direct support to our partners on archiving projects through our regional programs. So for example, helping to develop archival workflows for a particular project through a collaborative process. And then we'll usually provide like practical training and support throughout the span of a project. And then besides projects, we also work to create shareable online resources like the Activist Guide to Archiving Video and other resources in our library, which we'll share a little bit more about later. And I think we're also very active participants in the human rights archiving community. So you might see us or bump into us at conferences or events or webinars or panels like this, throughout the sort of different community spaces.
Thanks, Yvonne. I'd like to ask members of our community here, what does video archiving look like in the ecosystems that you're part of? What are you collecting in your communities? Perhaps we start with Patrick.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I'm glad to be here. To start with, I think it's important for me to create the context, the background of where I come from. And I think I'll start by saying Refugee Law Project is a community outreach project that is found in Uganda, and this is in East Africa. And so we are surrounded by a number of countries which are actually marred by conflict. In the east, we have Kenya, and then in the west, we have DRC Congo. In the north, we have Sudan, South Sudan. In the south, we have Tanzania, and then southwest, we have Rwanda and Burundi. And so you find that this is a Great Lakes region, and in all these regions, we have conflicts that have been, destabilizing the communities, which have forced so many other citizens to flee their homes. And this displacement actually comes with a lot of baggage. And so Uganda being the epicenter of such a place, find that there are a number of that come. And besides being the host of all these neighbors, we find that even in Uganda itself, we have been in internally displaced communities as well. And so for decades and decades, we've been trying to grapple with the issues that were affecting the community. And so in terms of the materials that we are archiving, we've been able to document a number of stories of those who have been affected by conflict. And so these are in form of videos, in form of photographs, in forms of artifacts. And so these are normally they're very dear to the community because it helps them in terms of memory. And so we are able to use those memories either to tell stories, but also a number of interviews that we recollect from the community. They're actually evidence. They're evidence of what actually took place during conflict. And so, of course, there are so many issues that come up. We are victim-centered institutions that are supporting conflict-related, conflict-affected communities. And so by the time we have refugees coming from elsewhere and we are hosting them, we have our issues that we have not actually dealt with. And so by archiving some of these stories, some of the events, we kind of can use it to compare notes as educational materials, but also for areas where we've had violations taking place in different places. We've been using the video as a tool for social therapy in terms of how people are able to talk about their issues, but also encourage those that are like them to speak out. So in a way, we have a number of materials that we collect over time. Of course, we started by documenting their interviews, but later we found that it was important that we start to tell their stories. And so we started making documentaries for accountability purposes, but also at the same time, we thought that we can use that as a tool for outreach and advocacy. And so in a way, we graduated, and now we thought and said, how best can we use this after years of documenting? And so we've been able to also use video as a tool for conflict resolution, especially for communities that have wronged each other. They're found situations where they don't see eye to eye. And so we've been able to move between the two communities to say, how do we solve this? And so by narrating to two different communities, we make a back and forth movement whereby they're able to understand what has been the cause of this conflict between them. And so I think in terms of the 30% of being leaders that are affected by conflict, we kind of have to act as an example and see how best can we deal with conflicts that affect other regions. And so we've been using a lot of our materials for teachings, and some of the materials we've been able to use have been able to influence policies at different levels, because in terms of engagement, we speak to duty bearers, we speak to policymakers, we speak to so many other high profile members of the community. And so that is one way that we've been using our videos. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for situating Uganda in the landscape. I'd like to ask Brenda to share a little bit about, what does video archiving look like in your communities?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for organizing this event. When we in Malaysia, Freedom Film Network, when we heard about this event, we were super excited, super eager. We're like, okay, we have to join this Global Human Rights Archive talk. Really more to network and to also share some of our practices. So a little bit about Freedom Film Network. Freedom Film Network is a non-profit organization, and we are based in Malaysia. We support social filmmakers and civil society in using films as a tool for social change. And one of the key programs in Freedom Film Network is the Arkib Film Rakyat. Arkib Film Rakyat is the people's film archive. So we came out with this cool name because what we hope to do with the archive is to preserve and make accessible the history of our nation's social movements through this archive of social films and footages from 1993 to present. Our starting point is that we inherited all these footages that was documented by our partner, Pusat Komas, which is an NGO that uses popular communication to organize grassroots community to advocate for their cause. So it's 3 decades of grassroots documentary video footages that Pusat Komas and later Freedom Film Network had filmed from 1993 till present. As you can tell from the era, they were filmed on mini DV, VHS, U-matic, and Hi-8. And we have a lots of material in DVDs and CDs as well. So I must say we are a young archive initiative, just to put that clause there. But through the archive, we can share some of things that we look at and we think is important for our archive. Through the archive and our initiative, we feel that we are able to gain a deeper understanding of censored or forgotten histories and culture. So for example, we have videos about the indigenous community in Borneo, Sarawak, who were displaced or resettled in 1990s because their land was taken over by state to build a dam. We also have footages of students' activism in Malaysia from the early 2000s. We have footage of Reformasi, which is a political movement demanding for social justice in Malaysia from late 1990s to early 2000. So in this archive as well, we do also have footages which documents human rights violations, such as police brutality towards rallies on the streets. We have interviews with detainees of the Internal Security Act in Malaysia, which is a preventive detention law. Now it has been repealed. And we also have documentation of human rights violations of urban forced evictions faced by marginalized community. So in our Young Archive initiative, we have raw footages of the social movement that I mentioned. And we also have completed films. We have over 60 films that has been produced by the festival from 2003 till now. And these completed films are on social justice issues in Malaysia, such as stateless issue, poverty, indigenous rights, education rights. We are trying to focus on outreach and engagement as well at the moment. And we have a webpage that is still in progress, but we aim for the webpage to be an online video resource center with a public online catalog data where people will be able to access these stories. I think the other thing that is really important for us is that looking at Malaysia, where there's media censorship and strict controls in implementing media laws in Malaysia, this archive footage on social movement is key for us to understand our issues past and present, including the injustice and struggles faced by the community. These are censored or forgotten histories.
Thanks, Brenda, for sharing that really good overview and about the living movement of archiving. I'd like to move to Noor. Could you please share how you are engaged in video archiving and what are you collecting? What is the role that you play in your community?
Thank you very much, Meghana. Really appreciate this huddle, and it's quite important time also for the Rohingya community. So I will start introducing myself. I'm Mohammed Noor. I run multiple initiatives. One of them is Our Vision, which is a grassroots media. We run out of Malaysia as well, but most of the footage comes from Arakan, Burma. And then we make sure that it's their voices are heard internationally. So out of Our Vision, there's about 2 archives that gave birth from Our Vision. One of them is called RGA, Rohingya Genocide Archive. It started in 2017, late 2017 and 18, which is basically a collaboration between Witness and Our Vision, where the RGA formed. We've been receiving a lot of graphic videos from ground about the murder and killing and burning and so on and so forth. Very harsh footage. That's where we decided that it should not be simply published online or on the social media, but rather than archive it. And then as we move along, then things are started to build. So the RGA mainly is for justice mechanism, accountability, and also to facilitate all those who are investigating the crime of genocide into the Rohingya issue. And the second most important part is the community memory of the event, because that's not what happened in 2016 and 17 is not the only or the first time. It has been happening almost every decade, but people tend to forget. Unfortunately, there's no proper archiving. It's mostly oral history that the Rohingya knows in 1942, 1962, and then in 70s, in 80s, late 90s, and in the year 2000 and 2012 also. And then 2016 and 17, there was like major 6-7 massacre that has no record except some oral. So in 2017 and 18, that's where we started to collect all these archives. So we have quite a number of collection which are been sorted out and put into a system. And also we build a model that can be used for other community to archive. So along with that, we're also working on a community archive, which is not private, but in terms of public, where there's a lot of historical evidence of Rohingya existence, their cultural heritage, their language, all the other historical site, and so on and so forth. That's where we've been storing, along with oral history, recording all the previous parliament members and figures and leaders, to put all this memory in one place or another. And at the same time, but we also can see a lot of effect on the ground of this archive where people remember. So we have multiple events like 25th August, 3rd June. So this is some of the commemoration of Rohingya atrocities, and also the remembrance of genocide that has been going on for the last 6-7 years. So we also do that. So archiving is not simply, and most importantly, the last word you mentioned, which is the living archive. So we are now seeing another wave of genocide that is happening right today for the last 6-7 months in Arakan state. Unfortunately, it was happened by the Burmese regime, and then from the military. Now it is the Rakhine rebel group called the Arakan Army, which has been slaughtering a lot of Rohingya for the last couple of months, unfortunately. So, and the archive is ongoing. So this is an ongoing process. There is a lot of progress in terms of archiving. Unfortunately, there is very less progress in terms of delivering justice, as Yvonne has mentioned. It's a very slow, long process. People tend to ask us, what is going to be the benefit of this archive if the justice is not delivered, if we do not go back to our land, if we do not have our rights. So unfortunately, it's a very heartbreaking, but we are doing a part that is still way less than what is supposed to be done for the community. That's what we are doing for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Noor. I'd like to move on to Lauren, please.
Thanks, Meghana. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren. I'm the program director at Open Archive. Open Archive was founded by Natalie Cadronel and helps documenters and archivists, history's first responders, to safely store, verify, and share critical mobile evidentiary media. So we conduct co-research, and we build tools, and we create guides to support this end. Way back in 2011, before the Snowden revelations, during the Arab Spring and Occupy, and after Iran's Green Movement, Natalie was working with frontline activists to help them archive their critical footage of these events. Those posting footage on social media were increasingly vulnerable to surveillance and targeting. And as an archivist and activist, Natalie knew that this media and those recording it needed much more protection than they could access. At that time, this seemed almost impossible. Usable and secure tools were almost nascent, and there was no dedicated focus on the long-term preservation of mobile media. And few people even know what a VPN was, or what kinds of privacy tools there really were for them online. In 2012, after Natalie met an Iranian refugee who had permanently left his country in order to share 30,000 hours of citizen documentation of the Green Movement, it became even more clear that history's first responders needed a secure and organized way to transfer their mobile media. Natalie began to research the ways these documenters could more easily, ethically, and safely create their own mobile media archives that gave them full agency over their historical records without putting them at risk. So enter SAVE, which is our secure mobile archiving app, which stands for Share, Archive, Verify, and Encrypt. SAVE is free and available at the Play Store and the App Store. And we really think of it as a workflow tool that provides a way of securely authenticating, organizing, and sharing mobile media to private or public servers and archives that you control. So we partner with at-risk communities to jointly create these secure, decentralized archives to ensure that human rights documentation, like many of my partners here are doing, is safe and accessible in the long term. And we currently work with DACs in the MENA region, Latin America, Ukraine, and the US. So we conduct human rights-centered co-research to build tools like our SAVE app, which help eyewitnesses preserve, protect, and authenticate and amplify crucial records of human rights abuses alongside those best practice guides on preserving evidence and combating disinformation. Now, as the program director, I feel very fortunate to be the main point of contact with our community partners through the research and the training phases. And I'd like to kind of just end this part by sharing an example of what one of our community partners has been doing with their evidentiary mobile media through our partnership. So Data Civica has had a remarkable year using data and technology to strengthen journalism and civil society in Mexico while fighting electoral violence, gender-based violence, and assisting in the search for missing people and clandestine graves and increasing transparency and accountability in the country. In partnership with Data Civica, we have focused our efforts on addressing significant challenges faced by those working to document human rights violations in the country, which include both physical and digital threats. It's important for those working to document and preserve evidentiary media that their media is safe from spyware and hacking and device confiscation. They also need a secure and reliable internet connection and messaging apps and a private, secure yet usable way of storing and analyzing their media. Working with Data Civica in the Mexican context is an opportunity for Open Archive to provide support for training and skill development and integrating secure archiving tools like SAVE to better protect them and their media as they carry out their important work. So these communities are incredible partners, and it's our aim that by equipping them with the tools to navigate the challenges in the digital era, we're doing our small part in advancing justice and accountability. Thank you.
Lauren, thanks. Thanks for sharing that example from Mexico as well. I'd like to move to Cristina to share a little bit about archiving in your
Sure.
community.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you to the Witness team for the invitation to talk about our work here and to share in community. So Archivistas and Espanglish, we are not an archive. We are a collective of archivists. We got together in 2018 in New York City. We are all members of different types of diasporas here in New York City. We got together after a frustrating conference where Latin American projects were being showcased, but the way that they were being received was with a little bit of pushback because they weren't being contextualized for an American audience. And we felt that this was something that we saw very, very often. We were very much aware that there are many archiving projects in Latin America and in Latin American diasporas around the world, and that the approach to our view was always that they needed to be contextualized for an English-speaking audience, or that people in our communities, in our countries, and our diasporas don't have the knowledge, don't have the ethical practices, don't have the tools, etc., the resources to do any of this kind of work. And we knew this wasn't true. So we decided to get together. We didn't know what we were going to do. But the first thing that we did was draft a manifesto, which I can talk about more about later. And from there, we decided that we wanted to amplify these spaces of memory making. And again, we had 17 different objectives. So we partnered with publications to write blogs about these projects. We created guides, we created workshops. We partnered with other organizations here in the US and brought workshops, for example, to Mexico City on web archiving. But eventually that became too much. And we were also starting to realize that we were coming with our preconceived notions as well. There are large professional organizations in Latin America that do these kinds of things. So we, again, partnered with the Federation of Students from Chile, who do a lot of work with community archiving, and then decided to focus or to refocus our community to be on community archiving and memory making at the community level, grassroots level in Latin America and Latin American diasporas, and whatever that means for anybody. So currently we are working in creating a network of community archiving, because the first thing that we decided to do was just do a meetup of community archivists. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. The first thing that we did was do a survey of community archiving in Latin America, and we got responses from around 12 different countries. We got, I think it was around 90 responses, and everybody had different needs, right? Like people wanted to learn about digitizing two-dimensional material. They wanted to know about digitizing audiovisual material. They wanted to know about the history of archiving in Latin America. But the salient point amongst all the respondents was that they didn't know anybody that was doing this kind of work. And of course, from our privilege of being institutional archivists or being archival scholars, we know that this work is happening, but we realized that the main need was a network of community archives. So we did a meetup and had the same conversation. So now we are in the midst of doing something that we hope will strengthen this network and also provide tools. So we first did a series of seminars focused on different entities doing community archiving in Latin America, and with different focus, like labor struggles, human rights, institutional partnerships, and climate change in the context of community archiving and in the context of Latin America specifically. And now we are doing a series of practical workshops, again, aimed at community archiving, with a focus on sustainable approaches and with a focus on DIY approaches. And again, we hope the people leading the workshops and the people attending the workshops are part of this network that we are trying to build, and kind of not. I don't think we are in a place to empower other people. I don't think that's really my job. I think they do that for themselves. But kind of we see ourselves as facilitators of these connections between Latin America and the diasporas as well.
Thanks, Cristina, for sharing about the expanse of your network and the depth and breadth of your work. I'd like to move on to this section where we talk about barriers and obstacles, challenges. Maybe Yvonne and Ines can share a little bit about what you have discovered through your work. And I know that we disseminated a survey last year on assessing the challenges communities are facing when it comes to preserving and archiving their video. So yeah, Yvonne and Ines, could you please share a little bit, and then we'll move on to the rest.
Sure, thanks, Meghana. And before I just start talking about some of the findings from our survey, I just want to say that, hearing from all of you about, the motivations behind your archive, like why you're collecting and preserving this material, and also hearing about the steps and the process you've taken to get to where you are, being young archives, or trying to figure out how to get from nothing to starting your own organizations, is just a really great motivation for trying to find creative ways to address some of these barriers that persist. So so as Meghana mentioned, between 2022 and 2023, we ran an online survey in collaboration with our regional communications teams, just to learn more about video archiving needs and practices, outside of the work that we were doing directly with our own partners. And so some of in all of the regions where we ran the survey, there were kind of common challenges that were consistently being raised. And so I'll just summarize the main ones that we found. First of all, I think this might be familiar to a lot of people in this huddle, but of course, the biggest challenge was just prioritization and capacity and budget and resources. And so, in all of the respondents we heard from, archiving was often just a very small part of what they were doing. It was a sort of a means to other, goals and other ends, often done on a volunteer basis, people feeling very overwhelmed. So that was one big challenge. The second big challenge was specifically about storage capacity and organization of stored files. So, as organizations continue to collect, their collection grows, but they're still relying on the resources that are available to them. And often without the sort of the time or the skills to maintain and organize those collections that they have already stored. Third big challenge was like providing access. So often people were collecting because they didn't want the content to disappear, but without having a plan for how they might provide access, especially to sensitive content, content with a lot of privacy restrictions or security restrictions. And so now they're at this point where they need to think about, like, now what do we do with this collection? How do we provide access to it? Fourthly, obviously, like a lot of people are working with, human rights material that's sensitive, that has a lot of, safety and security concerns, working in risky contexts themselves. So safety and security was another major concern, and not having resources to invest in, cybersecurity measures or storage measures that might be more robust and secure. And then finally, just the challenge of dealing with trauma and dealing with like graphic and sensitive content, on an ongoing basis. So respondents saying that they needed support for themselves and for the people that they work with, concerns for people who are captured in the documentation, and also concern for when they do share or provide access to those collections, like the impact of sharing distressing content with the public, and how to do that in a responsible way. Thanks.
And thinking about how power and privilege play into these obstacles, I would say that they're inherent in each obstacle. The lack of funding is the result of power structures. The community with less economic power constantly lacks access to the necessary resources for an effective archiving equipment, the expensive storage solutions, and professional training, which are necessary for an effective archival practice, and that could translate into robust and sustainable archives. So the so-called digital divide is the result of power and privilege. So we have communities with less privilege may not have access to the latest technology or reliable internet connectivity. And while privileged groups control mainstream narratives, excluded communities struggle to have their own stories preserved. And communities with less political power may face legal threats to their lives and or to their territories, which will place the work on its own memories in a secondary place. And I also call attention to the institutional hijack of community archives by archival institutions when a community recognizes that it's not able to sustain its archive and pass on its collection to robust institutions that can later prevent the usage of the archive by the community. So securing the collection, but also limiting the reach and impact of it. And power dynamics at play can expose community archives, which preserve sensitive information to surveillance, harassment, or violence. And community archives can be sites of decolonial and capitalist feminist empowerment and anti-cultural appropriation practice and narratives. So itself could be questioning of power and privilege in order to promote accountability, restorative and transformative justice, to support legal actions and advocacy campaigns, to amplify the voices of victims and survivors, bringing visibility to their story and struggle, and engaging public in conversation about human rights and justice. So that's I would say like how power and privilege work in community archives.
Thanks for sharing, Ines and Yvonne. I'd like to ask Lauren and Patrick to share a little bit about their particular challenges.
Sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about the needs assessment research we do, as well as some decentralized archiving research we've been doing at Open Archive. So as I mentioned earlier, we spent much of the past year working with 7 communities in Latin America, MENA, Ukraine, and Philadelphia in the US. Working with these communities has been an invaluable experience for us to learn about the amazing work they do in the pursuit of justice in their communities, as well as really to look deeply at their needs, pain points, and risks while they're documenting and archiving mobile media as evidence. So as we conducted our needs assessment research, we noticed how much the communities we had in common when it came to barriers, much like what Yvonne was just talking about. The communities we work with are often operating in conflict zones or areas with repressive regimes, facing digital and physical threats that are aimed at silencing them. And these physical threats like device seizures, arrests, and forced data deletion are quite common according to our research. Additionally, digital threats such as surveillance, censorship, data breaches, in-transit interception, and other online security privacy challenges really compromise their ability to safely upload and share data. Concurrently, there's some challenges maintaining long-term evidentiary digital archives, balancing the trade-offs between security and usability when we're talking about these tools, how to overcome data format obsolescence, hardware failures, and ensuring consistent accessibility across evolving technological landscapes. So with these challenges and barriers in mind, we're really curious about the pros and cons of decentralized technologies for our communities. We know that with the right tools, our communities have the potential to proliferate justice, accountability by exposing abuses spanning from police brutality, violence around protests, government corruption, war crimes, environmental harm, and a ton of other human rights offenses. So while decentralized storage and the blockchain are highly effective technologies, they can improve archival workflow by offering media redundancy, improved accessibility, authentication, and provenance for that media. We at Open Archive have reservations about their disadvantages as well. At best, we hope they will be able to provide secure, distributed, verifiable, long-term archival storage for their crucial evidentiary media. So at the core of archival process really lies the critical component of storage. In the spirit of the organization and archival ethos, lots of copies keep stuff safe. Decentralized storage can solve the redundancy challenge that our community archives face. So decentralized storage technologies involve distributing data across multiple computers and regions, each independently controlled by a different entity. In this way, they can offer a more robust and collaborative approach to data hosting, long-term preservation, and access. What truly defines a storage system as decentralized beyond data distribution is the underlying principle that the computers hosting the data are controlled by different entities and that no single entity exercises full control. This kind of true decentralization as a way to mitigate risk and liability serves as a safeguard against undue influence or tampering by protecting the archive from interference, such as censorship or media manipulation and technological failures, which is a really important consideration when dealing with sensitive evidentiary media. Distributing responsibilities across multiple entities can improve redundancy and split up the tasks of managing, curating, and hosting the archive. So there's so many options when it comes to decentralized storage, which really necessitates careful consideration of the trade-offs encompassing usability and cost, security, privacy, and resilience. So human rights archivists must carefully assess which decentralized storage technologies to use and in what combinations in order to best safeguard and deploy their data. As these technologies are still nascent, human rights archivists are uniquely positioned to infuse civil liberties like transparency and accountability into these technologies. Their expertise, advocacy, and active participation in the decentralized storage ecosystem can ensure that these tools are designed and implemented in a way that supports justice and makes preserving truth to power safer and more effective. So through our ongoing research, advocacy, and active participation in the decentralized storage ecosystem, Open Archive works to identify challenges and opportunities with the goal of improving upon these systems to ensure that they're beneficial to human rights archivists. And we are in the middle of publishing a few blog posts on the subject, which you're welcome to check out on our website, which is at Open Archive, and under the news section. Thank you.
As for me, a lot of what the rest have said in terms of resources, storage capacity, accessibility, all those apply to us. But I think I would like to mention one gray area that has been really challenging for us. And it comes around challenging disputed narratives. And of course, like I said, we are victim-centered, and a lot of the documentation that we do in terms of testimony. Of course, the victor stories are all over the place. They're being told. But now you do not find space that speaks about the victims. And so that is what we center on. We try to bring those voices out. And in terms of contesting some of the narratives which are going around, it has rubbed institutions the wrong way. And so we find that there are areas where there's a time where we got shut down temporarily because of producing certain documentaries, which they thought that was not conforming to the narratives that the institution thought should be going round. But another most very important key area that I'd like to talk about is the issue around the current Anti-Homosexuality Act. And this started way back in 2013, where there was the anti-LGBT law that was passed. But that was struck down in 2013. It was struck down on grounds that it was not passed according to correct parliamentary procedures. And so that very law came back in 2023. And because we work with a lot of refugees coming from different areas, and so you have the others that come from other areas, they have their laws, but when they come to Uganda, they tell you their stories and you record those stories. And some of these stories are very sensitive. You realize that those stories actually, they go against the laws of the land. And so I think those have been very difficult, challenging areas for us, besides the small ones we've been mentioning. Of course, in April 2024, the Constitutional Court upheld the 2023 Anti-Homosexuality Act. And so much as the court did strike down sections that restricted healthcare access to LGBTI people, but you find that they still criminalize the renting of premises to such groups of people. And so it becomes hard for us who work with all categories of people, irrespective of your social status, your legal status, and all those kind of things. And so finding a refugee, for example, coming from DRC Congo and wanting support maybe medical support because of whatever is gone through, it's very hard to start working with such a group of person. And so in terms of the testimonies that we take, they're quite sensitive, and then you are between a rock and a hard place in terms of dealing with that. Of course, refugees might be shielded by international law under the UNHCR mandate, because with UNHCR, the custodians of refugees, and so if there are such kind of situations, it's easy for them to quickly repatriate these refugees to a third country or somewhere where the law might not necessarily target the LGBTI community. But now, for a case like the internally displaced persons, you know, in these wars that we've had all along the Great Lakes region, we've had incidences of male survivors of sexual violence, those who have been violated during conflict. And because of such laws, you find these refugees don't come out. And that's why we've been very strong using this tool to try and fish out where are these men who need medical rehabilitation, who have undergone through this sexual violence, so that we are able to assist them. And so that has been quite a very challenging area. And now with this current law, you will find that a lot of such groups of people might be mistaken to probably be engaging in such an act. And then for us, how is it easy for us to start trying to get out these kind of people to share their testimonies? Of course, these testimonies can be used in different ways, whether it's for criminal charges in futures in terms of accountability. But most importantly, these testimonies from these victims, they help in terms of healing even the society, even the community, because truth-telling is behind everything that we do. We know that when these truths come out, it's the beginning of healing for a community that has gone through conflict, who have been hurt. Sometimes it brings closure to them, yeah? And so it's a gray area for us, and it's so hard for us to understand how to circumvent this kind of situation. Of course, we believe that we need to negotiate some of these at a certain high level, and that's why we think that having this kind of archive could help in trying to design certain policies that might be exceptional for a group of such victims. And they are not few. There are so many. Everywhere there's war, you find that you have this kind of categories of people who have been violated, sexually abused, and they seek for treatment. Some of them take very long periods without treatment just because of the stigmatization that is around those categories of people. And so that I thought I could bring it out because of course, with also the East African community, where there's integration at political level, but when it is at community level, when does the law apply to them? Because usually when you're a refugee, the common person in Uganda might think you're an alien, you're a foreigner. But you find that the East African community says we are one. We are a bloc. We are forging an economic bloc for success. But differentiating these two people, because literally, if we are East African community, we are then supposed to be internally displaced persons, but we still refer to those that come from the neighboring countries as refugees. And so the laws they are double standards. So sometimes they apply to your advantage, sometimes they apply to the disadvantage. And so as Refugee Law Project, we find circumventing through this, we need to hold back, and that delays a lot of our decisions, because then you have to see how do you circumvent such issues at macro level. Yeah, I think besides that, all that we've mentioned in terms of storage, in terms of funding, resources, all those are challenges that we've faced and we continue to face. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for sharing on the extreme polarity between law and healing, and sometimes our archiving can be the midway point. And thank you, Lauren, also for sharing some of the advantages and disadvantages of emerging technologies. I'd like to move to Brenda and then Cristina and Noor to share some of your tactics and strategies in in the work that you do. Brenda, if you could go first.
So the process of developing the archive, actually, we are not archivists in the beginning, and we had zero knowledge. So it was really challenging at that time. But we knew the materials we had were very important. They were precious, and we had a deadline because the materials were in a format that will be obsolete or already obsolete at that time. So there was a clock on for us to start this archive project. And at that time also, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the expertise, but we just started. We just did what we could. And we started with volunteers. Whoever would say, yes, I will come, I will live in your house, and I will migrate some of your tapes, or I will come to your office, you just feed me, and we got them to come and support us to migrate the tapes and the CDs. Only in 2020, we managed to get funds, and that's when we could systematically migrate in an intensive way. So we had 2,000 over hours from mini DV, DV Cam, DVDs, and we migrated into digital files, video files, and it took us about 7 months every day, just migrating and migrating. So it was because we had resources that we could do this. And even to convert the files or from tape, we had to rely on getting older equipment, older softwares. And we also didn't have space in terms of storing the original sources, storing these new digital files. And the players that we were using to migrate were breaking down on us, and it was hard to come by. But I think time and dedication is crucial in this, to just keep going, even though there were lots of challenges. I think basically it's high volume of migration, high volume of labeling all the digital files. The storage, we had to find a huge storage to keep the digital files. And then we moved on to the next process. We need to, for us to access it easily and to make it accessible to others. So we had to do cataloging. And it took us about 6 months just to test the video files to see if we are capturing the right data for our users. We had to create cataloging rules so that we are consistent. So there were 2 types. One was on the content itself, and the other catalog data was on the physical holdings, the format, the source format. And it was a huge learning curve for all of us. It wasn't easy as well to find good teammates, but it was just, I think in the end, 4 people, but maybe just 1 full-time at different times, and the rest were all part-time. But we managed to start cataloging. However, even when we started to catalog, we found that it was hard to be consistent, even though we did have cataloging rules, because we were all human, right? And also to get the right person to do cataloging was difficult. Someone who's interested in history, understand social movement, to be able to do research if we are unable to find the data, which was 20 years old. So there's a lot of overlap of interests and skills. So these are some of the challenges. And we learned that we can just stay put and keep perfecting one thing, or we can move a little bit and come back when we have time. So yeah, we were stuck many times, but we keep moving forward. And it's really nice to have teammates because we are able to discuss and ask questions and then make a decision together. So since then, we've taken in other collection. People heard that we were doing migration. So there were other people who documented the social movement 20 years ago, and they provided us new materials in High 8, Beta Cam, Mini DV. And we're like, okay, we have to restart the process. But I think the other thing that was key for us is to have consultants, because we didn't have the expertise and very little knowledge. So it was very good to work with archive experts like Joshua Ng from New Zealand Archive, and then the witness team as well, Arul and Yvonne. They supported us through the archiving process, and we had meetings at least every month. So everyone had alternate weekends or weeks that we met. Yeah. I think now the next challenge is outreach and engagement. We are trying to make it accessible to our users. We are trying to figure out how to make it relevant, our past social movement histories, these alternative histories, stories of resistance. How are we going to engage with the audience, our users? And we've done a few outreach projects, doing some tests now on how we can make it more popular or get people to be more involved in archive. And some of the conclusion that we came up with is also that we see social archives contributing to activism today. So for example, when we show some of our archive videos, we are highlighting underrepresented voices. And these archive videos actually bring attention to stories and experience of marginalized communities, ensuring that their perspective is included, is documented historically, and the injustices are also documented. And this provides valuable insights to current or contemporary social issues and movements. At the same time, the archive video also serves to challenge the dominant narratives. As mentioned, Malaysia has a very strict censorship and media ownership control over content. So these archives offer alternative viewpoints. It's prompting a more comprehensive understanding of our history and relating it back to current events. So it enriches the way we articulate the narratives. And finally, I think one more conclusion that when we're trying to do engage is that we see that it preserves memories. Social archives also ensure that the stories, the struggles, the achievements of our past activists are preserved for future generations. So many of the activists that we have in our archive are no longer with us, but it's documented in our archive. So through the archive, we can acknowledge their contribution and to keep what they had done in the past alive. So this archive then can inspire and motivate current and maybe future activists to take action to show that change is possible and achievable.
Thanks, Brenda. Cristina, would you like to share a little bit?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we started by creating our drafting and publishing our manifesto, which has 9 short points. The first one is by us, for us. We believe in the power and self-determination of our own narratives, identities, and collective memories. Our communities are the true knowledge holders. Number 2, we believe in the potential of the archive as radical or experimental in form, as a site of resistance to further advance movement building and solidarity. Number 3, we seek to build spaces centered on transnational and equitable solidarity between Latin America and Latinx communities throughout the US. We acknowledge the importance of decentralizing from the dominant US Eurocentric lens. Number 4, we seek to create networks of support to leverage resources from north to south and vice versa. Number 5, We seek to leverage the privileges we hold as archivists and cultural workers via the creation, collection, and distribution of archival resources in our language first and foremost, while amplifying the work currently taking place within our communities. Number 6, we recognize the complexities of gender, race, class, and color, both in Latin America and within a US-based context. Given the array of identities found in our communities, we understand that both contexts are not the same, nor is one more valid than the other. At the same time, we acknowledge that it is the legacies of colonialism, racism, patriarchy, and heteronormativity that have silenced our communities, primarily women, indigenous, Afro, and LGBTQ communities. We hope that through these complexities, we're able to hold space to continue this transnational dialogue and, most importantly, build collaboration centered in equity. While we're not exclusively a women identifying collective, we honor that we are women founded, as women's contributions, including emotional labor, have traditionally been overlooked both throughout our histories and present, including within the archival field. Number 8, we are committed to anti-oppressive practices in our work by challenging and disrupting existing hierarchical and traditional methods and structures of archiving. And number 9, we reject the appropriation, commodification, and exploitation of individuals and community stories and histories. So in practice, as I mentioned, our whole practice is based on collaboration. At the moment, we have 5 members of the collective that are active. And we, as I mentioned, we are the connectors, we are the organizers. We strive to not be the ones speaking at the meetings, giving the lectures that we organize, or leading the workshops that we organize. So in building these equitable collaborations, what we try to do is, for example, someone attends one of our meetups, and we identify that they have a lot of experience working with one of the issues that was brought up as needing more discussion. So instead of us creating a whole event around the theme, for example, outreach for a specific community, we will seek funding to pay that person to then be the one who teaches or talks about attendees about that specific subject. So that's one example. The other example is, as I mentioned, we are in the midst of a series of practical workshops for community archives or community-centered initiatives outside of the institution. And in our call for professors or workshop leaders, we were not only asking about their specific experience in teaching or teaching about community engagement, which is one of the subjects of the workshop, but we also asked them to read our manifesto and talk to us about that and talk to us about how their practice and their ethics align with the type of work that we are trying to do in the collective. And in that as well, we are not thinking about archives only, but we are thinking about the other areas that interlace with archiving and archival education. So we also follow a framework of popular education, Latin American popular education. So in that call for teachers or leaders of the workshops, we were also asking about their methods and how they apply a framework of Latin American popular education to their work, to ensure that the work is equitable in all areas of it, not just in equitable archiving, but how the teacher relates to the students, and making sure that we erase hierarchies as much as we can, which is one of the cornerstones of Latin American popular education. From that, from one of the applications, we saw that there was a person that was very, very experienced in Latin American popular education and talking about it and teaching about it. So we also hired that person to do a workshop for the teachers, and to ensure that, again, that the series would follow our ethical concerns around what it means to teach, who is teaching, and what it means to learn as well. And in similar ways, it's very important for us to talk about how we work behind the scenes, beyond this idea of popular education. But when we have a new initiative or a new project, we also get together and talk about what that's going to look like for us. And one thing that we often talk about, that people ask us about, is that we are a non-hierarchical collective. We don't have a director. We have people doing different kinds of labor at different stages of our projects. And we strive to keep it that way. And we realize that sometimes that leads to the project being ephemeral, and we are okay with that, as long as there's no hierarchy in that sense.
Thanks for sharing, Cristina. I'd like to invite Noor to share a little bit.
Thank you very much. I mean, additional to what I have mentioned earlier, so there's a lot of new challenges, even though when we have a process of collecting the data and information, now different things has been going on for last couple of years. You will see not only violence of Rohingya in Myanmar, but now similar hate speech, online hate campaign, and harassment of the Rohingya has been going on in Thailand, unfortunately, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. TikTok has been used very, aggressively. And if you understand the algorithm, how the TikTok or Facebook and all those things are actually aggregates content, unfortunately, and push content towards people. That's what has been happening in the case of Rohingya has been harassed after they get off the boat in Indonesia, where unfortunately, like college students went and mob literally to some children and women, unfortunately. So TikTok has been, it was used to be Facebook before during 16 and 17, where most of the Rohingya activist pages were being blocked during the massacre. And we are one of the early victims. Our vision, there's multiple Facebook pages. We have about a couple of 100,000 likes. It's been removed from us in the name of community violence, community guidance violation and stuff like that. We have been, contacting, we have mentioned to witness as well. Now it seems for the last 1 year, TikTok has been actually playing a very detrimental role in, promoting hate content. And if it is just into the, social space, then we are fine. But this is really brought down to the ground. You can see people in Malaysia, some guys will go TikTok and catch one Rohingya, say, okay, read this, read that. Are you Muslim? You are not Muslim. In Indonesia, they're doing the same thing. So there's another aspect of documenting that as well. And similar thing happening in India, unfortunately, where the Muslim was been mobbed by saying that you have slaughtered cow, and Rohingya has been also, put into the loop, unfortunately, in Jammu and Kashmir, where a lot of Rohingya, shelter means to say is a makeshift camps with some bamboos and there's no house. It's been burned down. Many of them are. And then there's a cross-border, investigation and, interrogation going on, saying that Rohingya has a resistance group in Burma, and Rohingya in Malaysia is connected to that, in Indonesia connected to that, and they are doing a cross-border, it's such a harassment to people who have no access to anything, no education, no healthcare, and been also pushed around by other authorities and in other countries for different reasons, unfortunately. So there's of course, there's a one good side of technology, which is, you can use the technology and, promote awareness. But at the same time, fake news is so easy to, to burn you out through the Facebook and through TikTok and through WhatsApp now these days. WhatsApp has been used quite viral, in terms of that as well. Among the others, Snapchat, and so there's no proper way of, putting this content away. There is no communication between those victim community to the all these platform owners, to properly regulate and so on and so forth. But along with that, now these days, it's also a lot of tools that is available free of cost at your mobile with very low-end mobile. You can change voices, you can change a lot of fake news. Now you can make footage stitched together, putting some new dates and stuff like that. And then it's very difficult to verify. And the original victimhood narrative is been actually tossed away. If you have 100 good video and you have just one bad video, it's enough to discredit the rest of the videos, saying that this is all fake. We have seen this video before, it's been stitched together and it's been collected. And then, there's also when the victim collects the video, they say, oh, it has been collected by Rohingya, so it's bias. It's collected by themselves, right? So unfortunately, those kind of things we have been hearing, and the merge of this other technologies, which is AI, which has been operating. AI is not a new thing. All this algorithm and rest of the machine learning has been going on through TikTok and Facebook for quite some time. A lot of people do not realize that. So, but having all those additional challenges, right? Technical challenges and also propaganda is another one, unfortunately. Even within the Rohingya community, you can see different narratives. If somebody say this particular leader, Rohingya leader, is working with Burmese army, and this man has been advocating all around the world in UN and all this, and he's been discredited, and this video has been circulated left and right without any. So to do that kind of things, we at Our Vision and Witness, we have have multiple attempt of doing number of things. One of them is, how do you collect evidence without harming yourself? How do you collect the videos? How do you do that? So in instructional video of recording videos. And we also now constantly doing a lot of how do you authenticate the video and make sure that you do not forward. I know it's just one button, your one finger, you can forward it, but it can damage so many people. So you have to be responsible before you forward anything like that within the community, which harms many people. So a lot of practices, a lot of so technology and morality, and most importantly, the practices of ethics, which has been, unfortunately, is very low in terms of general public usage. So, okay, I just forwarded. What am I supposed to do? I just posted it. So that post could, aggravate so much of hate, and it could go into a very detrimental way. So putting all this in places, and we also working on us and Yvonne also trying to make an online course, how to be an archivist, and all those elements will be involved. And we have been working on an academy called Art Academy, where all of those are being taught in different subjects. So, and then we intend to have this how to be an archivist in Rohingya language, so that many Rohingya from different parts of the world can actually be an archivist for themselves, or for their own family, or for the good of community, and so on and so forth. But so lastly, what I wanted to do is we also been working on a number of projects, as I told you. One of them is having a open more transparent archive, to have a community archive using blockchain. So we have used multiple. To give a specific example, we have used like Filecoin and Arweave and multiple, so trying different way. And I realized that there's a huge potential, in addition to what Lauren has said in terms of negative aspect and so on, but also I believe this could be. So we are also working with multiple organizations to figure out how an archivist community can be incentivized to be part of the archive, to run a node maybe, and share the transaction fees, so that that could actually promote in many way to be an archivist, or to be a archive holder, and also to get incentivized in a way that it has not been before. So enabling funding could be a very way of doing that. and additional layers of AI could be used, to personal AI. There's a number of organization is actually using personal AI to, to scrap the data that you have and manifest into something, not into data analytics, but, beyond more than data analytics. You could do many more other stuff that could be done. So, yeah, lastly would be balancing all this negative impact of technology and also bringing the ethics not only among the archivists, also among the community, because archivists will collect material from the communities. If community has to be responsible, at the same time engaging all this platform that include TikTok, Facebook, and also all the latest Web3 technologies, blockchain and AI and rest of it, to mobilize and also to give them information, so on do no harm policy kind of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. I think you've already answered our following question, which is journeying into the future and how do we continue to engage in this work in ways that expand, our communities and our movements. And very quickly, I just want a very quick answer. Maybe Noor, while you're still here, is archiving still relevant?
It's very much, and it is increasing more and more. If you look at what internet is doing, I think it's very worth mentioning here. You have this organization called Internet Archive, which is based out of San Fran, which actually archives everything that goes on the internet. So a lot of people are attacking them also not to archive everything. There is some private data and stuff like that. So, but what archiving is really relevant for us in our community is that you will see a lot of all this, military personnel that come and says that, we have to finish the job. We have to kill all the Rohingya. We have to kill blah, blah, blah. And then they actually delete the tweet. So this is where the archiving really, really plays a very important role into that. But also community memory is another one. So I think archiving not only relevant, it's actually required more and more to not only for the community memory, also to learn from our past experiences. So, what that trend has actually damaged, how much it's actually damaged, how much that fake news has actually damaged the original, plight. So there are many things that Rohingya themselves, circulated some photos from some part of Africa, burned down villages and all that, and they're claiming to be Rohingya, and Rohingya push themselves without knowing it. And then some people come and, discredit. So those actually when we archived it, we did mention in many of our, seminars and all these things, which really, really made people to think that, oh, yeah, it's so easy to forward with one click, but it has a lot of implication. It has a lot of responsibility on that click. So archive, I believe, is still very, very important. And it could be more important if we know how to use it better.
Thanks, Noor. And asking the same question to Brenda and Patrick, in terms of our journey moving towards the future, do you feel that, your communities and your movements, do you feel that, archiving is still relevant?
Definitely. We just migrated all our content and we are cataloging, so definitely. But just to also share an example, maybe I can share a story. We recently were invited to showcase our archive on protests in Malaysia in the last 10 years or 20 years. And it was an exhibition to celebrate and document protest history through multiple archive materials on protests. This was in conjunction with a coalition of civil society organizations who advocate for clean and fair elections. So this was just held last month in Kuala Lumpur. So we showed protests, rallies, demonstration-related archive footage. After the exhibition, I did a few short interviews with the participants. And I interviewed 2 young indigenous women who were participants and at the Congress. And they said that they had watched an archive video of their community, the Orang Asli community, which is the indigenous people community in Malaysia. the community had submitted a memorandum on their customary land rights, and they protested against the land policies. So they had gone to the Prime Minister's Department. This is 14 years ago. So we showed this at the Congress. And the young indigenous women, they were very engaged and they wanted to know more of what happened that day. They're very inspired to see the collective action taken by the community. One of the women said that when she saw this past protest by her community, which involved all generations, who spoke up to defend their rights, she felt more determined, she felt more courageous to continue to do the same. Furthermore, she said that she saw there was a woman leader who led the community in the protests, and she's so inspired. She said that she believes this had spurred more women to lead in their community today. And another activist said, as a young indigenous woman, as a young activist, I feel inspired and I want to inherit this fighting spirit from those who were part of the protest to defend our rights, for those who defended our rights 14 years ago. So she says that this archive video reminds her, oops, sorry, I got a call. This archive video reminds her of her past leaders who fought tirelessly for the community and they feel now they are to continue the work to ensure the rights of the Orang Asli are upheld and defended. So the social archive material, the video, the short video with clips, engaged these young activists and showed the artifacts of lived experience and bridged these multiple intergenerational activists who now are inspired to move forward, to continue the advocacy, and also to that inspired action on their part. So it has inspired them and motivated them to take action, and for them, they say change is possible. Yeah, so that's a short story I'll tell to say that, yes, archive is very important, especially to the youth.
Thanks, Brenda. Truly inspiring. Patrick, would you like to share a little bit?
Yes, I go with the same. Archiving is very important at this particular time, especially for those of us who are in Uganda. Like I said, the conflict in Uganda has moved across all the regions. And so there have been so many undocumented truths. And for us, these are community truths that have to come out. And so besides the so many materials that we keep archiving, including photos, whether they are artifacts, the videos are quite powerful because we are now using it for transitional justice. Yeah, because when we have these archives, we know that there are evidence for truth telling at a time when we want a national reconciliation, because for the past 40 years, it's close to 40 years that we've had the same regime, and then we've had a number of conflicts across all regions. So we are craving for a national truth telling, a national reconciliation. But there is no better way to have it if we do not have an archive. If we have archive, we have videos that tell these stories, that tell the truth, that can demand for compensation for those who have been wronged. And we can watch some of these things and we know there should be no repetition of the same. I think for many people who watch these videos, if we start to use them, they feel that just understanding what happened helps to give them closure. And of course, with healing a community, it's not that easy, especially if they're coming from conflict. And so to us, the more we keep on archiving some of these documentations and materials, we feel that we are preserving the history, we are preserving heritage. For a place like northern Uganda, where we had 20 years of conflict in encampments where people would not move, the old perished, and all the records were destroyed. We feel that the oral history we can get from any elder helps to preserve history and pass it on to the next generation. And so this helps for such a community, for human development and for continuity. And so to me, in terms of transitional justice for Uganda, I think this archiving is very important. because there's so many wars that are being fought today. There's a whole issue of identity now that is coming up. Children who were born out of war, out of rape, who do not have identity. All this needs to be documented, and we can use it for research. We can use it for different ways, education and all that. But most importantly also, as we've been talking about AI, I think today, if we are to search, if we are to just randomly search, we find a lot of materials that the responses come from AI are those that are documented by non-Africans. And so the more we keep on documenting this and creating narratives and, you know, recording testimonies, we start to build our own stories so that in future we can probe our own AI and they give us responses. So I think archiving is very important at this particular time, because for human development, for us who are in Africa, I think it's key that we start to document that and preserve our history and heritage. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. And the same question to you, Cristina and Lauren. Is archiving still relevant?
I mean, very much so. And I think this is why we decided to work with community archives also, because of how much these practices are needed for traditional archiving in general as well, to critique and inform and go against what we know as provenance, for example, what we know as access, what we know as community engagement, what we know as community, right? We've heard a lot today about access and what it means to preserve a story that could put someone in harm's way, that it's like literally violence for someone, right? And I think that's very important for us, like for our collective. We do this as volunteers, but we work as some of us are PhD students, some of us are institutional archivists at universities, at museums, where our practice is informed with this idea of access and access to everything, right? And now we're working with all of these community archives that see archives as something relevant, that see preservation as something relevant, but not just for a historian to come in and analyze someone else's history and produce a book, right? But historical preservation for the sake of healing, right? And social justice, and not just in the ethical sense, but in the legal sense as well. So definitely more than ever is it relevant, but I think grassroots community archiving principles are more relevant than what we've known all of our lives as what archives are.
Yeah, I just reiterate everything everyone has said before me. Archiving is absolutely still relevant. At Open Archive, our goal is for those documenting and managing human rights archives, for them to be safe, firstly, for them and their media to be safe, and also for their archives to be accessible for the long term, for accountability measures. And we're really interested in building tools for human rights defenders, with human rights defenders, tools that center their experiences and carefully consider the potential harms they could be doing, and ensure inclusion through a human rights-centered design approach. So I think the last thing I would honestly like to say is that the connection between technologists, tool builders, and communities are so important. And it's going to be, increasingly important as new technologies are here to support archivists.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I move to close this live huddle now. Thank you so much for your generosity in sharing your insights, your expertise, your learnings on what preservation of community stories look like on the ground. It has been such a pleasure to have you with us in this live huddle. I do hope that you'll continue to collaborate with us in archiving video, archiving life, archiving hope, and hope to chat with you all again. Thanks everyone for your presence.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.